Okay, everyone. Sound check. Good. Video works. Excellent. So, if you're curious, all the dates and stuff, uh, Eternities started spoiling yesterday, which is mainly why I kind of forgot. I didn't. I'm busy in my own life, working as a nurse and what have you, taking care of kids and a wife. It all goes by so fast. One of these days, I'm gonna wake up and I'm gonna be an old man. My kids will be my age, so yeah, enjoy them while you can. But you're here for magic, and you're here to learn things about magic. Um, the significant thoughts that come across my mind. If you're a new commander player and you're trying to learn about the significance of these cards and the stories about some of the significance about them, then you're in the right spot. Right off the bat, we're starting off with the spoilers from day 2, I suppose. We could go in reverse order and start from the bottom if that's what people prefer. Since we're already here, we'll start from day 2. But these 2 lands are quite significant. They don't seem like much. They seem like budget chaff, but they're the first of their kind. Um, there are 2 sets of lands that aren't finished yet, and that is the cycling dual lands that are tutorable or super desirable. You could crack fetches um, that don't specifically look for a basic type. And say you had a wooded foothills, which is the red green fetch land. It says you can search for a forest or a mountain. This fits one of the criteria that it being a forest, so you could get this and put it into play directly. Um, It's super good because when you crack a fetch and search for a basic, it obviously only taps for 1 color, while this gives you the option of 2. And the same thing can be said about Vernal Fen. Now, they printed a cycle of these cycling dual lands back in Amonkhet, and they only made, I think, 4 or 5 of them. So it's been unfinished for a long time. I was deployed in Afghanistan when Amonkhet first came out. So it's a little bit of a throwback memory, yeah, for me. I think a lot of people have been waiting for them to finish this cycle. It's probably not going to happen, unfortunately, because it's in the commander deck. Now, the red black and the red green are already established back in Amonkhet. They've been reprinted in Oblivion. They're worthless. Great budget options. It'll probably take a long time for this to be budget friendly, unfortunately, just because there's going to be a low quantity of them in circulation that you can only get in the commander decks. Um, Most of the time when I build on a budget, I spend no more than $1 on my lands because they're not very impactful in my budget lists. So it'll be a bummer. I'll have to wait to play these. Now, this one is from a. It checks to see if you have 2 or more basics. They also never finished this cycle of lands. Came out back. They came out back in the original Zendikar, so even longer than Amonkhet. This has been like this is 4 years. This is nearly a decade that we've been waiting for the other pieces. Now, allied versus enemy colors. You might hear that in the magic realm. What does that mean? Well, I will show you. It's based on the back of a magic card. Guess I have all caps on. Okay, so if you look at uh, the pentagon here, the color that borders the other one is an allied color, while a color on the opposite end where there's a space in the gem, these are enemy colors. So white and green are allied, white and blue are allied, white and red are enemies, black and white are enemies. Now, they do not have they have the enemy version. So we have the green red, the red black, we have the blue black, blue white, and we go around the circle here, and we have the allied versions of these lands, but we don't have the enemies yet, and these are the first set of the enemy lands. What up, DF? How's it been? Because it's in the commander list, the commander list being its Jund, these colors are already counted for, the red, green, and the red, black. We still don't have the black, white, the blue, red, or the blue, green, so on and so forth. So the other commander deck is going to be Jeskai colors. So it is possible that they release those pairings. So Jeskai meaning we get the blue red one, and we get the white red one. That is it, unfortunately. So we could get 3 of the 5 enemy colored lands that we've been waiting for, which ain't bad. Who knows? It's really early in the spoiler season, and they could put these in the base set, but I doubt it based on the symbol here. This is the commander version set symbol. Moving on. I talked a lot about lands and like the historical significance of these that I'm pretty excited about. Scouring Swarm. This is basically a Scoot Swarm that cares about lands going to our graveyard instead of coming into play. Now, will it be as impactful as Scoot Swarm? It's hard to say. It's definitely got a more difficult floor to cover. You have to get 7 lands into your graveyard. In the right shells is good. The upside about it is it has flying. Scoot Swarm did not have flying, but normally the Scoot Swarm effect is you just overrun the board and it didn't matter if you had evasion on it. I think this card will be like super hyped and overpriced. Like the pre-ordering for things, if you're new here and you never like been around the pre-ordering schemes of the Magic market, it's incredibly overpriced. Yeah, Scape Shift. There you go. That's a good application for sure. Let's look at the price of this card. Remember when Copy Swarm came out? It's the dinosaur from Lost Caverns of Ixalan. They had the bonus sheet cards are Jurassic Park themed. Copy Swarm was like everyone was freaking out. They're saying, "Oh, this is going to be a $30 card," and then here we are in 2025, and it's nothing. So let's look at Copy Swarm. I'm pretty sure it's dirt cheap. Maybe I spelled it wrong. Yeah. Less than $5. It's a budget-friendly card. Now, if we look at the price history, I guess we could look at that too. 1 year. I feel like Ixalan has been longer than a year, so I wish I could look further back, but like it's been relatively stable for the last year. When did Ixalan come out? So it came out 2 years ago. If we could go back 2 years and I could remember how long that was, this was definitely in double digits, probably $20 at one point. Now, we look at Scouring Swarm. Let's see what they're pre-ordering. Don't pre-order these. It's a bad idea. $15. This will be in single digits within a month. Kind of like Final Fantasy right now. If you're not up to date with like that, it just behaved the same way as most sets do. Is it crashes in prices a month later because everyone's opened everything and they got a lot of stuff. They gotta make their money back. It's particularly more brutal the more popular set. So like the same thing happened with Lord of the Rings, where it was incredibly expensive when it released, and now there's only like one card above $5, and that's the One Ring, and maybe Sauron. Everything else is pennies. Yeah, they don't. They don't remember us. They don't want us to remember. That's for sure. I wish you could like click an edit button and look further back, but there are like the Magic Market, Google. I mean, there are ways to look further back if you really wanted to. I'm not in the financial world. I guess I should be more accurate. How to look up long-term prices of Magic cards. Let's be more. I want to be as accurate as possible. Script stuff. Some of these look kind of shady. I haven't been on Reddit in so long. This seems like a legitimate website. While that loads, continuing on. I think this is a little overhyped. It's probably not as good as we would hope. I think it's going to fall in the same category as Compy Swarm, where people are going to. It has similes to Scoot Swarm, and it's not. It's nowhere near as good or as powerful. It's good, but it's not as good. Like, you should not be paying more than Scoot Swarm for this, despite it being a rare, because it's quite frankly weaker than Scoot Swarm. Let's see that price point. You get a base version. You should not pay more than $2.80 for this card because it's strictly worse. That's my rule for you. If you pay more for this, then you're just not the best at, respecting yourself as an investor. But not, I shouldn't say investor, but a consumer. You're not a very good respect for yourself as a consumer. Planetary Annihilation. What I thought was kind of funny about this is the bracket system, because this blows up lands, automatically puts a pre-constructed deck in the bracket 4 category. Like, it doesn't work with land destruction stuff because of all the stupid rules behind it. Because now, if they say that the constructed version or the pre-con is a bracket 2, then they have to undo a lot of bullshit rules. I really don't think land destruction should auto place you in a bracket 4. It takes a little bit of, I don't know how to say this, but board evaluation skills to fire these off. You don't just do it to do it unless you want to lose. I just thought that was food for thought, humorous that they're making a quote unquote sealed product that is a bracket 4 right out the gate. And I kind of want to know, like, if anyone else has thought of that in the Magic world or not. It seems like a mistake because now we're just going to open the door to a lot of stupid arguments in the online community about Magic. But if no one else thought of it, then I'd like to think that I was first of how a little bit of a mistake that was. Horizon Explorer, pretty darn good. The lander token is basically a rampant growth because you sack the lander token for 2 mana and you put whatever basic into play. Pretty darn nice, especially when this is in play, it untaps the land that you search and tutored for and put into play. So you get to use it the turn you play it. So it effectively cuts the cost of the activation in half on the back end. That's a super powerful effect. This is probably going to be a big money card if I had to guess. Just the fact that it combos with itself, it goes into like other territories and is in those land combo lists that want these kinds of effects, like the Moloku combos with retreat to Coral Helm combos, and like the stupid guys that untap your lands. And um, this fits in those types of lists. If you wanted to break it, that's how you'd break it. But if just for like a strict power level on its own, it does a lot of work. It's also got a really sick stat block. Stuff's all a stupid like chip damage coming your way. I feel like uh, that'd be funny. Um, I don't think it'll change anything. I think if you're cutting lands for stuff like this, that's a bad idea. You should only be cutting lands based on your overall mana curve. So like if your curve is between 1 and 2, uh I would say, I guess I need to be more specific. If you're above 1.5, you should be running at least 35 lands. If you're below 1.5, then you can go into like the 33 territory. Once you get to like close to 1, you can get away with going sub 30. And when you're sub 30 lands and your mana curve is that low, you're running so many zero drops, and most zero drops are artifacts. So um, they act as lands in that scenario. You can make that argument. But I want to give people the benefit of the doubt. I don't think people are going to just cutting lands because they have stuff like this. I hope not. I don't think it's a player trap. I think if you want to talk about player traps, I think this is a player trap, a consumer trap. Mechanic wise, traps station. I am not a fan of this mechanic at all. There's gonna be a couple of good ones, and then there's gonna be a lot of bad ones. It's like the level up ability. You're trading off tempo for an effect that's not a guarantee. You're hoping to get there in the end. Magic is getting faster, and these like leveling up abilities don't work really. Because like you have to tap down up to 8 total power. You don't have to do it all in one turn. You could do it in like piecemeal, which is nice, but you have to do it at sorcery speed. So that means you're going to be vulnerable to crackbacks or just getting chip damage, what have you. It's a tempo issue that I don't think it's going to see play in 60 card formats. And like you might see this in very casual format, like Commander. Like I wouldn't bring this mechanic into a bracket 3 or higher. Uh, they have a snowball's chance of like doing anything with these things. Now, if you want to take full advantage of it and be more on the competitive side, you have to drag the game on long and play stacks lists, which a lot of people don't enjoy. I like that or I like that style of play, and this would be a nice shoehorn. And then the same thing could be said about level up abilities. All will be one playable. All will be one. Let me look that up. I think that's one of the spoiler cards. Oh, okay. I mean, it's already playable. It's playable with specific lists, though. That's the one downside about it. It combos with is it Obnixilis, the demon from Aftermath? It's an infinite combo. Yeah. I think it gets better because you could put multiple counters on the station cards, and you shoot multiple things with it. But like, it's already popular for its combo usage. I would just be a little careful of these. Like, three is negligible for additional land drop. Um, it's a if you want to play competitively, yes, it will be. Um, I think Sazeril is going to replace Lord Windgrace because the way it wins in one and one is I just strip mine, lock people out of the game, and Sazeril just does that better. He's the first. Like, we've gotten Zask in the past, but I couldn't play it online because it hasn't been released online. Uh, it's strictly better than Zask as well because Zask is 5 mana and only 2 colors, while Sazeril is 3. Um, Pretty darn good, in my opinion. Now, going on to like the final ability of these station triggers or activations or whatever, the thing that you're pursuing, the juice has to be worth the squeeze. If you're going to be punishing yourself with tempo and not having a defensive board and you're just going balls to the wall, then this final thing that you're pursuing better be worth it. Now, take that with a grain of salt. Make cast a permanent spell from your graveyard or sack a land by sacking land in addition to its other cost. So, is that worth it for one spell from your graveyard? Probably not. I would not play this card personally. I would not sacrifice tempo in a game of Commander, even where even I notice in like bracket 2 games we're ending around turn 6 or 7 when that's one trigger per turn. By the time we get to this final stage, it's probably in the final throes of the game, and you're not going to get enough triggers to warrant the tempo loss. And it will have niche places, like it'll fit in like the creature heavy decks, the big creatures, or the go wide creature decks. I think those are decent spots. Like, the ideal situation is you play the spacecraft and you get it to the final tick in one shot, so you don't have to suffer the tempo issues I was talking before. That makes it strictly better than level up, in my opinion. It still suffers the same problems of like if you lose the piece, then all the effort you put into it goes up in smoke. Would I play this in like in a Traxa list where you're just upticking one at a time? Uh, Not really. If your plan is to just uptick it once a turn with the the end step trigger with Atraxa, probably not worth your time. However, Atraxa is vigilance, you can attack, gain a bunch of life, then tap it down main phase 2. That's probably the better part of that exchange, is just the proliferation part is negligible compared to just tapping it down and getting the counters on that way. Certain it's gonna be a niche kind of mechanic. And they're mostly going to be creature heavy lists. Not a bad looting effect. You sack a non-token permanent, you exile the top card of your library. So it triggers with fetch lands. That's what the biggest application of this will be. You will exile the top thing of your library, and if you minimally, you'll have 2 red and whatever land you tutor for to cast that spell, so you'll have 3 mana. Most people avoid these looter effects because they're afraid of missing out on value, being unable to cast the thing. This significantly cuts down the investment. Pretty darn good. Mm. Littering Hatchery. Not a bad I guess, unique land. It lets you cash in. I wouldn't run this unless we're playing a list that untaps our lands on every turn. Because, like I said, doing something once per turn isn't really valuable unless it's a big effect. Then it's worth your time. But, like, putting on one counter, losing life, gaining mana, it's just like passive value. Again, I would only run this in lists that go long, or I'm able to untap this multiple times and use it over and over again to cash in for this effect that we desire, putting in a bunch of insects with flying into play. Bailoff Prime. Kind of cool. I like these, like, token generators that are inverted. You know what I mean? Like, we used to only generate tokens when lands enter the battlefield. Now we get way more effects of lands going to our graveyard. Sazzle wants her stuff hitting the graveyard. That's a land. So, and it's a pretty scary reward. 4/4 beast tokens. The the closest thing that we have to making these tokens, uh, converted mana cost wise, are a lot more expensive. So, like, Obstinate Baloth, and then the dragon one that we just got with Tarkir 2 sets ago, put in 4/4 flying dragons every time land comes down. So we cut down 2 whole mana for a relatively easy trigger. We just play a bunch of fetch lands. Even on a budget, you could do this, like Evolving Wilds, Terramorphic, Escape Tunnel, Fabled Passage. Those are all budget options for searching for lands that trigger this over and over again. Okay, so the first time I spoiled these, bonus sheet cards, I have a very distinct problem with this, and it's glaringly obvious. They all look the goddamn same. Maybe that's a hot take. Maybe I'm being too critical, but this is annoying. There's nothing succinctly different from these cards. It kind of suffers the same problem that Amonkhet did when they did the invocations with the stupid Egyptian writing and, like, the weird ass borders. Is you can't tell the difference from card to card, and this kind of suffers the same problem with this stupid text box. But the art, I call it the spacescape. It looks like it's all done by the same artist, but if you look at the bottoms of these cards, they're all done by someone different. But because they're all spacescapes, they all look the goddamn same to me. And that just, like, irritates me to no end. Like, I feel like Wizards of the Coast put these artists in a box. They wanted something very specific, and that's what they get. It's just a bunch of cards that look the same. Now, what I like about the bonus sheet cards is you get 2 versions. Some of them they've spoiled yet, but they haven't spoiled them all. So I guess this one is not one of them. But there will be 2 versions of all these lands at some point. But if you look at these versions of the bonus sheets, they just annoy the shit out of me for how similar they look. Like, I want to look at a card and instantly recognize what it is. Like, if I see an Obstinate Baloth at the table, I know exactly what it is without having to read the card just based on the art. These all look the same, and I would have to spend time picking them off the table, reading them, putting them back, just to make sure they are what they are. And again, that might be a hot take and a stupid gripe, but it annoys the shit out of me personally. Dubbing it the Spacescape, I want to make that term popular too. Make it happen. Make it some, I don't know, history here. The planet lands are fun. Now, I could. Yeah. Okay, I take that back. They're not that fun. The juice has to be worth the squeeze. It's also a tap land. It's a big turnoff to me. If these were untapped, I would tolerate it a little bit more. And like the juice that you're squeezing, I haven't seen anything too impressive. Like this one makes a 2/2 robot, and then gives an anthem effect. It's not bad, but you have to tap down 12 power to get there. At least it facilitates the kind of strategy that you want to be doing, which is a creature based strategy, which is the only way to be incorporating station cards. If you're playing a station card and you're not a creature based strategy, that's a mistake. um, okay, so this is a good example. This has a reward for copying artifacts or enchantments, not a creature based strategy. You can shoehorn, like they do exist, like the creature enchantment list, the artifact creatures, but they're very few. There's not a lot of them worth playing, worth slotting in your 99 cards. Like you'll want a handful of the good ones, but you're not going to play a whole deck of them because there frankly isn't enough support for it. Um, there is a niche spot for this. I'd probably play this in Anathea because you turn your enchantments into creatures, and then you could use those creatures to pay into this 12 goal here, and then start copying the tokens that you already have. That's the one good application I could think off the top of my head for this planet in particular. Oh wow, this is actually a really good uncommon. You can sack a creature or an artifact to surveil one. Normally, sack outlets for 1 mana are good, but if they're 2 mana, they better be especially good, and this is one of those especially good ones. There's no cap to how many things you could sacrifice. You could pitch to your graveyard as long as you have fodder. Um, this is probably going to be a $5 uncommon, if you want my opinion on that. I think it's going to be up there with like Pile On from Aether Adrift in terms of popularity. If this is less valued less than Pile On, I will be ashamed because I honestly think it contributes way more to the strategy it wants to be played in versus Pile On is just a good card advantage piece. Um, the decks that want free sack outlets, they'll all want a copy of it. Cosmogrim Zenith, this feels more like a 60 card format kind of a card. It rewards you for casting 2 spells, and then you get 2 choices. You make you make 2/1/1s, or you put a +1/+1 on your whole board. Now, white weenies, they love this kind of stuff. It's got a 6 stat block too. From a commander perspective, it ain't bad. The problem with like these like aggro lists is they are like lists that like to cast a bunch of spells really fast. Is they run out of gas really fast, and then you stop reaching the second spell consistently. Um, it wouldn't be a bad thing for Spellslinger though. Like they're already playing the Monastery Swift Spear kind of stuff. No, you know what I mean. The Monastery Mentor. That's the one I was thinking of, where you cast a non-creature spell, you get a 1/1. Those lists are fine because they play a bunch of cards that cantrip, and you'll always reach the second spell pretty consistently. And it says each turn, so you want to be running a lot of instances so you could get multiple triggers per revolution of the table. I think it's a better fit in terms of commander for Spellslinger lists that have white. Is this the alternate? Okay, so here's what I mean. Here's the stupid spacescape art. Here's something unique. Um, it kind of gives off that like digital vibe. It reminds me of No Man's Sky a little bit. Still a spacescape, but the alternate arts I've seen, this is the one that is a spacescape kind of feel. At least it's succinctly different, and I could tell the difference. Like if you put all of these versions with the stupid wispy bottom border next to each other, I wouldn't tell them apart. You stick this in there, and I'll know immediately what it is. Stands apart. Now we get to the real gas here. Sammy the Wildcat Captain. Holy smokes. Now, this is something I want to brew for sure for the channel. Double Striking Vigilance. It's got two of the trifecta of like the devil keywords. The only thing it's missing is haste. But the kicker, the best part about this thing is spells you cast have affinity for artifacts. Now, the only other card that we can compare this to is Mycosynth Golem, and that's a $20 card. Partially because it's only been printed once, and that was Fifth Dawn, and like it got a little bit of a pump from Secret Lairs and Fifth Dawn, or not Fifth Dawn, but Mystery Boosters, and it's still sitting at $20+. And there's a reason for that, and that's because you get to circumvent costs. Mycosynth Golem only gives cost reduction to artifact creatures, which pigeonholes you into a very specific strategy. It's also not legendary. This bad boy can be played from your command zone, and it applies the affinity for artifacts to everything. That casts a much wider net. You're also in two more colors, so you're in a very large net of like playable things and strategies. If you want to do some wacky, crazy stuff, that's also an artifact strategy. This is going to be your list. Now, this lets you like play some unique builds, I think. It lets you have two branches of a strategy in one deck. You have half your list as artifacts, and then you're allowed to focus on whatever else you want to play. I think there's going to be a lot of creativity around this. As like boring as it sounds to just be playing a bunch of artifacts, it could diverge in a lot of different places. And it's kind of like, it makes me hopeful like Morophon. You know what I mean? Like there's no one right way to play Morophon, except for maybe cheating spells into play. But like most people don't play it that way. They play some unique strategy that sets it apart from any other stupid Morophon build. Um, Alpharel Stone Chosen. I'm kind of worried that this is going to be like one of those stupid cards on Arena that you can only play on Arena based on like this little box back here. But we could talk about the mechanic of Void. Whenever he attacks, whenever a non-land permanent left the battlefield this turn or spell was warped this turn, a trigger happens. So there's different ways for Void to trigger. This one cares about it attacking. It just, the precursing conditions is you neither have warped a spell, which is you cast the alternative casting cost of something. We'll talk about that mechanic when we come across it. Or something's left beforehand. It's very similar to the Revolt trigger, although Revolt triggered on every end step and it casts a much larger window to get the trigger. This is going to be more specific. It narrows your window down, makes you play a certain way. It forces you to play main phase 1. Not a good feeling. But making people lose half their life is probably worth it. If you had to ask my personal opinion. And the bonus, or sorry, the what do you call the guest art cards are sick. They're going back to the VHS kind of cover styles, And there's definitely some like movie inspiration going on here. Like Magus of the Moon here is definitely Flash Gordon. It's pretty sick. Next to Fate, this is a reference to one of the very first sci-fi movie of all. Having such a hard time remembering Metropolis. Sorry, struggling to remember. Um, these two are a little tougher. This could be any like alien sci-fi movie that I could be referencing. Nothing in particular. It just has to be like some kind of alien creature falls from the sky. It's a hive-minded thing. It's like a locust. It consumes all your resources and moves on. Kind of alien creature. It's pretty fitting because that's kind of what the slivers are. They're a hive-minded creature base. Paradox Haze is a super good at blue enchantment. I'm trying to. I don't know what the comparison is. It's a cloning kind of sci-fi movie. The best cloning movie I've ever saw. Spoiler alert: it's Moon. It's such a good plot twist. You never see it coming. Super good. All right, back to the space scape lame stuff. Much better. I can tell what's going on. I can pick it out from a crowd. This, not so much. I guess if I had to choose a gripe, is the art feels a little lazier in terms of like you just have a bunch of saturated colors and a wisp, threw it on a card. Not a whole lot of detail in there. You get creative with the shading, and that's about it. Maybe being too critical. Art's good. It's unique and succinct. Oh god, I do not like this art at all. It reminds me of space travel advertisements back in like when we were first going to the moon. This has a very particular art style from back in the 60s. The Endstone. I think this card's gonna be a little overhyped. I think I saw pre-order prices for $50. Oh, my kid's up. Well, all right. Get it to be Endstone. Uh, super overpriced. I think people look at this and they're like, "Oh, the downside's not bad. We lose half our life." Round it up. End step. So the clock starts ticking. The turn it comes down. If you can win on the spot, it's a good card. If you can't, there's gonna be some consequences because there's no snowball's chance in hell that three other people sitting at the table are just gonna let you sit there comfortably. They're gonna be coming at you. You're gonna be at a low life total. You're gonna be vulnerable. Now, I also say that it's overpriced because we already have two cards that already do this. Um, Null Perfusion and Recycle do the same kind of effect where you play a land or cast a spell, you draw a card. The downside of those two other enchantments I mentioned is they reduce your hand size to 2. Pretty bad downside, but If you cast everything, ditch all the crappy stuff, you start to snowball the next turn. I have had a lot of success with recycle and null perfusion, but if you ever become empty-handed, like someone makes you discard your hand, you will be out of the game. Uh, there's nothing you could do. This isn't as bad, and I did describe a very niche situation with recycle and null perfusion. They're great budget-friendly cards. I think null perfusion and recycle are around like $2. I think the other drawback of recycle and null perfusion is you don't get a draw step anymore. Yeah, skip your draw phase. So if you get forced to discard, you will be up shit's creek because you are not getting a card to replace that anytime soon. You have to entirely rely on what's in your hand. And the idea is you just string yourself along until you close out the game, but you could brick the moment you hit a pair of lands because you can only play one land a turn. This doesn't have that problem. So like it could be worth $10, but I wouldn't pay more than like 15 for this. I think it's definitely overpriced now. It'll be interesting to see where this sits price point wise because it has its serious drawbacks. It has its pluses over the other two cards I mentioned. Makes it really hard to judge, but I just know that it's probably overhyped. Starfield Vocalist is the anime art. It's a Panharmonicon, but with warp. If you don't know what warp does, is it lets you cheat the card into play for its alternative cost, but the moment your turn ends, it goes to an exile zone, and then you have to recast it for its full amount later if you want to gain access to it again. It's usually useful for like if you have a one-off effect that you're pursuing, or if you want to try and combo win with this, you could. The way you break stuff like this is flickering it though. So like Braga wants something like this. You play it for its warp cost, you cheat its cost, and then you flicker it and you reset the warp. And then now you have a permanent play that you only invested very little mana for. That's the best application of this in particular is flickering the warp card before your end step happens. Wow. This enchantment's actually really good. Weapons manufacturing. Non-token artifact enters, you make a token artifact, and then when that gets destroyed, you deal 2 damage to any target. The tricky part is we need to find a way to sack said munitions. Yes, it would combo with Conjurer's Closet. You just put the triggers on the stack in a way where the warp triggers after. So in paper, you would say I put the warp trigger on the stack first. I put Conjurer's Closet on after. The Conjurer's Closet will trigger first. It'll flicker the card that's about to warp. It'll look for itself and it'll be gone. It will be the card will have a new identity at that point. Moving on. Yeah, weapons manufacturing. It's not perfect, but for how cheap of a mana cost it has, pretty darn good. 2 mana. I feel like in the right list, this is what you want. If you have a way of sacking an artifact from the command zone, this is going to be your all-time high staple kind of card. There has to be multiple legendary creatures that sack artifacts out there. that want this thing. It's pretty niche, but it's great. Other things that kind of like this stuff is like Clock of Omens, where you tap artifacts down to untap an artifact. That fits nicely in those lists too. But like I said, the only way you get consistency is if it's from the command zone. And I know there's not a lot of permanents out there that sack an artifact, let alone let it be at like instant speed and whenever you want to, however many times you have the fodder. Ooh, I guess it has to be red because the enchantment's red. So that kind of whittles this down a little bit further. Hmm. Wow, there might not be a free sack outlet legendary card out there. I thought there would be. There has to be. So far, I'm only seeing things with tap abilities and that have additional mana cost. So that card might be really cheap right out the gate. There's not really a demand. Okay. Dargo's a good use of that card. Sack any number of artifacts, reduce its cost. Bing, bada boom. The other good part about it is uh, if you infinitely loop it with Dargo, um, the tokens that you make from this thing is a win condition because it does damage to any target. Moving on, Aura Boyoid. Kind of cool. For 4 mana, you put X counters on each creature where X is this guy's power. For 4 mana, with every passing combat, your board gets um, compoundingly bigger. I don't know if compoundingly is a word, but it's pretty threatening. If you make games go long, this is a threat that people have to deal with eventually. Super good in go wide strategies. If you're in those Naya token lists, I would highly consider this. More stupid Spacescape cards. I, I I'm just a little disappointed. I really wish they made these look different from each other. The reprints are good. The lands themselves are probably they are pretty good. They're very like some of them are really niche and expensive. Some of them are more expensive because they're popular. So I will take my win in that department. I'll be happy with that. Making things more budget friendly. Singularity Rupture. Destroy creatures, then any number of target players each mill half their library rounded down. What's kind of wild is you can choose yourself. Um, and you can only choose yourself. I think the lists that do that, that like to mill themselves, are going to want this. Cuts your work in half. And it empties the board, which I feel like you have a problem in those lists. And that's once people figure out that your whole goal is to mill yourself, people's alarm bells start going off, and they start thinking of like all the terrible things that you could do in the future. Um, and the best way to punish you is just by attacking you, and this takes care of that problem and accelerates your game. I think it will be good in the niche list for sure. These feel like good 60 card format lists. Not so much commander. I'm not too excited about a vanilla creature that gets bigger. This makes other creatures bigger. It's it's whatever. Having big vanilla creatures almost doesn't matter in commander, but um this is a little bit better to abuse because you can target things, make select things 6/6s based on how many lands you have in play. This guy only makes himself bigger. Okay. Now we're on the legendary spacecraft. These are the reason why Wizards of the Coast is now saying you can play vehicles as your commanders. Um, Again, we're going back to the station discussion. The juice has to be worth your squeeze. If it's not, then you're going to feel really bad when this thing blows up and you barely got to do anything with it. So let's evaluate if it's worth pursuing and like sacrificing the tempo. Um, the one on the left, Inspiring Flagship Vessel. This is the Jeskai one. You add one level one, you put one counter on something or two charge counters on something. The caveat is it has to be something else. So you can't even put the charge counters on itself. Super lame, super irritating. Um, I guess on the plus side, you could throw the +1/+1 counters on a creature, tap it to fund the station here. I'm going to coin that phrase. Let's fund the station. It's what it is. It's a fund. It's a trust fund that you hope it will work out. Hedge fund. Hedge fund the station. The bottom part is other artifacts you control have hexproof and indestructible. Doesn't even protect itself. So it's going to feel pretty bad if this gets blown up after you pursued this for God knows how long. Hopefully not very long. Level 8's not as bad as the other ones we've seen where you're pursuing 13 plus. This one lets you sack a land on level 2, draw 2 cards, play additional land this turn. That's pretty sick. Um, that's a good floor, I will say that. The bottom part, 6/7 flying, vigilance, haste. Every sack a land, each opponent loses 2 life. It's not bad. It's a win condition. Um, the cool part is it gives itself haste, so it really lends itself to those creature strategies when you're going really wide or really big. You could play it, get it on the final level, and start doing the thing you want to be doing immediately instead of just I have a permanent now. It has summoning sickness, even though I was able to turn it into something. I can't use it for anything. This fixes that problem by stapling the word haste onto it. All right, the 5-color pile of Infinite Guideline Station. Oh, okay. So this ETB trigger is super good. When it comes in, you make a 2/2 robot for every multicolored uh, permanent you control. So it forces you to be playing minimally 2 colors on every single card. So it creates this like uh, effect that feeds into itself. You play a bunch of two colored minimally spells, and then you make a bunch of 2/2s. You could then use those 2/2s to pursue this bottom ability. It's consistent. Unlike the other stations we've seen where it's not so consistent, you need to build around this. The build around is that you're playing a bunch of like janky two colored things, but you have a very large card pool, and 5 colors has some of the best multicolored cards in the game. On its final level, when it attacks, draw a card for each multicolored permanent you control. Holy shit. That's a lot. So the robots you make are also okay, they're colorless. Okay. I was about to say if it doubled your draw power, that'd be insane. But it's still a lot. Like if you're putting down at least 6 bots and turning this on immediately, you're gonna see 6 cards and deal 7 damage to someone. 7 is a magic number. It takes 3 hits to kill someone. And then you have a bunch of fodder for whatever else you want to jam into the deck. This is of my spacecraft interests. This is probably the most interested one I'm in. I haven't played a 5-color list in a long time, but I like the unique build around. I already have a shell for this list. Actually, I built a 2-color tribal list around the latest Niv Mizzet. Pull that up here. I call it crayons because it draws you cards and does damage based on the number of 2-colored permanents you have. Only it's strictly worse because it cares about how many guild representation or how much guild representation you have. So it forced me to split it, which is even more complicated of a build. It's also budget friendly. This is a good start for when I construct that thing. A little bit more open where I can pick and choose things and I don't have to be evenly split in doing this stupid building game, but this is definitely a 5-color pile list that will make people irritated, I think. Regos the Deft Gastronaut. Actually, pretty cool. Lobster Citizen. Artifacts you control are foods, and foods have the ability to be sacked for 2 mana. You gain 3 life. The alternative is he himself could sack a food to deal 3 damage to each opponent. Now, at the beginning of each end step, if you gain life, you get to untap Gastronaut. Interesting. So, if we somehow gain life every turn, we could potentially shoot the whole table on each person's turn. It seems a little challenging. We need to find a way to make non-combat damage, basically lifelink. You just give it lifelink. That's all you got to do. There's a lot of cards in white that do this for cheap, enchantment-wise even. Equipments. I think that would be the best way of doing that. You just staple lifelink on this. Find a way to make a bunch of art like throwaway artifacts, and then just do 12 damage at revolution of the table and start the clock. Seems super fun. He's a Gorson. Gastronaut. Have we had a lobster monster yet? I'm gonna look that up. I don't think we have. I think he's the very first lobster we've gotten. We've had crabs. We've had crabs. This is an unglued card. He is the first playable lobster, folks. The memes. It won't be too funny when you're dealing 12 damage a turn, though, and gaining 12 life. He's a pretty good burn commander because you offset a lot of the aggro with the life gain. It's like why people play Lightning Helix in burn decks. It buys you time. Biotech Specialist is pretty damn good. 1/3 body for 2 mana, stuffs out little chip damage, and then whenever you sack an artifact, deals 2 damage each opponent. Or no, it's just target opponent. Yeah, I think it's better than 60 now that I think about it. Um, it only triggers on itself. I thought it was anything at first glance, so I think it needs a build around for it to be good. It's a win condition with the lists that like to sacrifice artifacts. I was a little more excited than I probably should have been. Exalted Sunborn. Man, I feel like Wizards of the Coast likes to make mono white things that just double tokens. It seems like a prerequisite because we've gotten so many of those lately. Like almost every set, we've gotten a white card that all it does is double tokens. It's a Baneslayer Angel that does it now. The Stelly Reclaimer. I was a little disappointed in this card, to be honest. The fact that it's non-creature, non-land is really obnoxious. So like it pigeonholes you into the things that you can get. Um, it lets you get artifacts, enchantments, planeswalkers, battles, whatever. It has to be. If you cast it for the warp cost, you can get something for 3, and when you cast it later, you get something for 5. It's a 2-for-1. It like encourages you to warp and wait to recast it. Uh, I just wish it didn't pigeonhole you where you couldn't get creatures or lands, because that was probably the biggest like drawback of this card. I think that's if they didn't have that clause in this would be a very expensive rare. Just for how awesome it is. It's on a body, could beat people with it. Um, I say that, but not enough people play Savine's Reclamation, so who knows how this would have done if it was more ideal, but we got what we got. Quantum Riddler's fun. It triggers when you have one card, doubles your draw advantage. It encourages you drawing incrementally and frequently versus drawing a lot at once. Mutinous Massacre, it's a sick board wipe. You destroy things that go away, and then you steal the things that remain. So the board will be empty, and you get to beat people to death with them. It could be a winning condition. You could at least kill multiple players. You might not win the game on the spot, but you'll come close. What you can do is, if the most powerful player has even creatures, you blow up all the odd ones, steal the even ones, and then kill the player that you stole from so they don't get them back. If that makes sense. Uh, it's it takes some like I guess board consideration and some really good evaluation to think on your feet. Maybe I'm giving myself a little too much credit, but like that is how you properly apply Mutinous Massacre. Wow. All right. Remember the juice worth the squeeze discussion? This is worth the squeeze. You tap it, and then you get a Tolarian Academy effect. I don't even care that this enters in tapped. Um, this like pursuit here will be worth it. You will the rubber band effect. You are drawing the rubber band back, you're costing yourself tempo, and then the moment you get to 12 is the moment you release and you slap someone with a lot of kinetic energy. And that's what this does. It's probably the best level up station mechanic I've seen so far. Um, the pre-release is early still. Like the pre-release ends in 9 more days, so they could probably print more station cards that can compete in this space of like being worth the tempo loss. But this is the best one. It's going to be expensive. Let's look it up. Earthros. What's the pre-order for that? Can I not even look it up? Oh, Uthros. Sorry. One less consonant. $60. Yeah, there's a difference. So this is the non-borderless one. Ugh. I really don't like this art. I don't like that. Like we have the silhouette foreground, and then I don't like the shocklands that do this either. Yeah, I'm not. I'm more interested in that. Way more cool, in my opinion. Even though it's a spacescape, it's way better than the foreground silhouette. It's just lazy art to me. Like filling this in with black space and then just calling it a full art just annoys the shit out of me. This isn't a full art. This is a half art, in my opinion. Calling it a full art just gets under my skin. Hmm. Oh shit. Okay. Eternity elevator. Pretty good juice. Worth squeezing. It taps for 3 mana at 5. Not the best going rate because like we have things like Thron Dynamo that does this for 4 mana. Comparatively, it's in the same space as like Gilded Lotus, but at least Gilded Lotus produces colored mana. Now, the bottom, once we hit 20, we add mana equal to the charge counters on this thing, which is a pretty darn good payoff. We just need mana to spend that, or sorry, we just need spells to spend that mana on, which might be another problem. But suffers the same thing over here. You need stuff to spend your mana on. What is this going for? Eternity Elevator. $11. Wow. Interesting. Maybe this is a big turnoff. The 20 counters. I feel like this is like. I wonder if that's underpriced. It's hard to say. I'd play it. I think this is actually a fair price point for like the juice being worth the squeeze, the tempo loss. Maybe people are scared off by the amount of tempo loss, the amount of investment you have to pour into it. But like at its worst, the floor is still really good. It's a colorless Gilded Lotus. I think $11 is actually pretty fair, but who knows? Maybe I'm wrong. Maybe this thing tanks. It is a rare, so there's going to be quite a bit of cards floating around. This is a mythic, a little bit different story. We're getting another card. No, it's a reprint. Never mind. Wow. This spacecraft is worth it just based on the floor. Whenever an opponent discards a card, they lose 3 life. On the final level, Flying Death Touch 310. When it attacks, each opponent discards a card. Each opponent who can't also loses 3 life. I kind of appreciate that. Too many times where you play a heavy discard strategy, at some point people are going to be empty-handed and all your discard effects are going to be useless. This at least gives you a reward for like hitting the wall going 80 miles an hour. It's still doing something for you. Oh, Frenzy Bailoff. This is one of the cards I liked and I wanted to showcase in the thumbnail. Uh, I think people get blinded by the spell can't be countered and creature spells can't be countered. That's like the big, oh my god. Um, it's not the first time we've seen these effects. Like we have Allosaur Shepherd, we have Destiny Spinner. Um, we even have Gaia's Herald that do that. Not that impressive. The impressive part is the combat damage can't be prevented. There's only one other card that does that, and that's Questing Beast. And people that play aggro lists will shoehorn Questing Beasts into their lists just so they don't get like totally messed up by I got you mechanic or like pillow fort strategies. um, it's also a 3/2. It's gonna be a highly desirable card for standard. Um, highly desirable for commander. This is gonna be a very expensive rare. What's the pre-order for this? See if that's fair. I'm $21. I don't think it's gonna hold. I think it'll be double digits though. I think it'll be worth more than $10. I don't think it'll be worth $21 though. Yeah, yeah. That's I immediately went to Teferi's protection, but they're not there. But like the Teferi esque effects where it's like you have protection from everything. This doesn't give a shit. Honey Badger doesn't care. That's what this guy is. We could briefly talk about these auras like Pain for All and Shrall of the Void. I'm not a big fan of like auras. Um, you almost have to exclusively play these in Voltron lists. It's because, well, most Voltron commanders protect themselves in some way, either with hexproof or protection and indestructible kind of stuff. That way, you don't get got. You don't get 2 for 1 when you go to try and enchant something and then your thing dies. It doesn't feel good. Now, there are some good applications, like Pain for All has a good application. The hit yourself types of commanders, like if you combine this with, I don't know, a Pyrrhenia effect is fun. Whenever the enchanted creature is dealt damage, it deals that much damage to each opponent. So, in an example of Pyrrhenia, we do 2 damage to everyone else, and we do 1 damage to ourselves. We break parity. And then also, it's a removal piece, so it works great in Voltron. On ETB, you deal damage equal to its power to any target. So, like, I've seen commanders get big enough where they can just kill you without commander damage. It's a pretty good, like, little snipe card, in my opinion. I'm not a big fan of this one. You attack, but you lose it if you don't perform the void. Void is in you cast spell for the alternate cost or had something leave the battlefield. At least this one behaves like Revolt, where it triggers on end step. So it's a little bit better condition than most. Hmm. Yeah, I feel like they had to have that condition to force it to sacrifice because you steal stuff from people's boards or their graveyards and animate it on your side attacking someone. It can be pretty annoying. Starwinder. This is like those coastal piracy effects, but a lot better. Um, whenever a creature deals damage, you draw that many cards. It's not like coastal piracy where you hit someone, you draw one per thing that hits. This gets you a shitload of cards for the amount of damage you output. I don't know if blue's really known for it. You have to pair it with other colors, but I can see people accidentally killing themselves. It kind of forces you in the situation where you have to kill people and end the game with state-based actions, so the draw trigger doesn't kill you. That's the kind of scary part about this card. Hopefully, you don't got a player at the table with more than 100 life, because obviously, in Commander, you have three opponents, 40 life each. It's more than 120. So if you get this ball rolling before the life totals start going down, you could kill yourself. Be a little careful. This is interesting. Famished Worldsire kind of behaves like a polymorph effect exclusively for lands. At ETVs, you sack all your lands, and then you just rip three cards off the top of your library. Right? No. It enters with three times as many counters, and then per land you sack, you could replace it potentially. Hmm. It's actually more riskier than I thought. I thought you got to go three cards deep, but this only goes one for one. So replacing the lands aren't guaranteed. Um, I feel like you want to pair this up with things like Splendid Reclamation. You float a bunch of mana, you cast this, sack them all, then you dump all the lands from the top of your library into play. With that floating mana that's left over, you use it to cast the Splendid Reclamation and get the lands that are now in your graveyard. It's just a little expensive at 8 mana. Got another token counter doubler. Not bad. Sunstar Dreadnought. What a mouthful. Jesus. At level 10, when you attack you deal 100 damage up to one target creature or planeswalker. They made this spaceship look like a sword. I wonder if they did that on purpose. It's a planeswalker killer. What's interesting is it itself doesn't have to attack. Something else has to attack to trigger it. Not bad. Hmm. You could play from the command zone, which is why they didn't make it 21 power. That'd make this a lot more expensive if you could. Yeah, it's alright. I'm pretty sure they're Dawn-Sire. Now, if this is more expensive than that spaceship that's like Gilded Lotus, I will be surprised. Hmm. Yeah, there's no pre-order for it yet. I think it's because it's a leak. Um, yeah, this card better not be more expensive than this thing. I feel like this is a lot better. Maybe that's personal preference. I'd rather spend 5 mana for the mana rock than the thing that just sits there and does nothing until turn 10. And even then, that's not too terribly impactful. We just obliterate a planeswalker or a creature for funsies. We're going to shout Exodia every time we get that trigger. Oh, Virulent Silencer. They're bringing poison back? Ooh. Whenever a non-token artifact deals damage to a player, gets 2 poison. It's not as good as I thought it would be. There aren't a lot of like non-token artifact creatures worth playing in the game of Magic. I know because I built those lists. I think it'll be very niche. It'll be a cheap uncommon. Oh yeah, this guy. Ice Till Explorer. This is head and shoulders better than Oracle Moldiah. This is the thing that power crept Oracle for sure. Never have we gotten before a card that plays lands from our graveyard and lets you play an additional land per turn. This thing is a fetch land lover. Um, Manipulating your graveyard is much easier than manipulating the top of your library. Now, Oracle Moldiah is nice because you get to churn through your deck a little bit faster, but it's a little inconsistent if you don't have lands on top of your library. I've had Oracle Moldiah do nothing some games. I feel like I still will always do something. You'll never have a turn go by where you don't get 2 lands in the play because of this thing. Versus Oracle, it's not a guarantee. The other fun part about it is you get the mill a card whenever a land comes down. So if you play 2 fetch lands and crack them in the same turn, which you could use the same fetch, play the fetch, trigger, crack it, trigger, play the fetch again, trigger, crack it, get a land, trigger. So off a 1 foot fetch land, we mill ourselves 4 times. That is insane. This is going to be one of the most expensive rares. It's going to be up there with that other rare that I talked about being the thing that can't be countered and damage can't be prevented. This will be competing for the top spot, most expensive rare. A token doubler in blue. We're kind of breaking color pies here. That's a first. It only triggers once a turn, so you want to make multiple tokens all at once. If you do onesies and twosies here and there, you're not going to get any trigger beyond the first. So It has limitations. Same with this. We have another uh, counter doubler, but this one only doubles on the first trigger and once each turn. If you do counters on everybody's turns, like Mothman, this is going to be the card for you. Make some room for this card because it's super good. The Mothman, if you don't remember, it puts +1/+1 counters on your board based on the number of things that aren't lands that get milled from your opponents and yourself. So Mothman himself will give you triggers on everybody's turn, which in turn triggers this every turn. Couldn't think of a more perfect commander right off the top of my head. Sick art, shitty card, unfortunately. I rarely play Warping Whale. It's a terrible card. It's a very conditional removal spell, or you make a Scion. It's like, who gives a shit? Doesn't do anything particularly well. Hmm. Sasur is probably worth it. Um, it says pay 2 less, sack a creature, draw cards equal to its power. If you're playing big, tall creatures and you happen to be in black, it feeds into itself. You tap it, you turn it on to its like level 12. You sack the same thing you just tapped, and then you seal the cards in the same turn. Pretty darn good. Inti Casual Vestige has warp for 4 colorless. When it leaves, draw a card. Put a permanent from mana value lesser than equal to your lands from your hand on the battlefield tap. So it's a cheat spell, and it encourages you to play it for the warp side first. So you get 2 triggers. It's also on a pretty good body. Down the road, I think this is a good 60 card format card. It's a good top end thing. Um, would I play this in Commander? Probably not. Think it's probably a little overrated. What sucks about it is like, but you could cheat in your Eldrazi's, but most Eldrazi's have cast triggers, which this doesn't do. It cheats things into play so you don't get the cast trigger. If you cheat a big Eldrazi, and I hope it's something that triggers when it attacks, and there are a couple of those. The Ulamog's Kozilek's variety. Sothra, the Super Void's very unique. It functions very similarly to the Edict enchantments, being Erebos and Great Pact. Um, the downside is once there are no creatures in play, you have to give this up. Versus the other 2 enchantments who don't. Take that into consideration. Once this leaves, you get to animate something into play under your control. Pretty good. It also is a graveyard hate card because it exiles the things that your opponent's stuff dies, and it doesn't affect yourself. Very good one-sided card. Now we're on the commanders. Zazril, we already know he's my favorite because he lets you play lands from your graveyard. From the command zone. Whenever you sack another non-token permanent, i.e. your fetches, you put a +1/+1 counter on put any number of +1/+1 counters equal to his power on up to 1 other target creature. So you make something else bigger. I feel like that part's somewhat negligible. You're playing it for the previous reasons. I mean, you could turn other things into threats and force people to use removal on rinky-dink things that they really would prefer not to. So, like, it applies pressure. That's what that bottom paragraph's really good at. Kilo Apogee Mind. Also very exciting. Whenever it becomes tapped, you proliferate, and it's in the right colors. White and blue are the best at untapping your stuff. White's more about untapping on other people's turns. Blue is about untapping and manipulating. Um, this will be fun to play. It also has haste, so you could attack with it and get the tap trigger. I can't wait to build this. I can't wait to build both of them, but I haven't played a Tim list in a while. Last time I did was Lost Caverns of Ixalan, and I actually played 2 Tim lists. Ellie and Grant, and then the other one was the pirate that proliferates when you sack something. Desert Cruel Captain is a 3 mana planeswalker. It has an alternative way of putting counters on it based on an artifact entering. It's pretty dope. I feel like people play this for 3, tutor an artifact that costs 1 or less, play it, and then undo the 3 mana they invested by at least 1. The bottom paragraph, you animate an artifact. Yeah, it's kind of a boring emblem, but the middle -3 is probably what people are going to be doing. They're just going to get their big juicy mana rocks, like their soul rings, their fast mana. That's the word I was looking for, and the shadow spear kind of effects. There's a lot of broken 1 mana or less artifacts, meek stones of the world. There's a lot of application in that middle activated ability for sure. That brings us to the end. The first day is always a lot. They release the most. They spoil the most cards on the first day. That's just how Magic has been since the dawn of time. And then they trickle things out slowly with every passing day. Like, let's see. I just want to show you an example of how much was spoiled yesterday. Okay. So you see this little bar off to the right here? It's basically to the top. So we talked about like maybe 40 cards. Um, they spoiled like 60 cards yesterday, and they spoiled like 30 today. And then it only gets increasingly smaller as time passes. So we'll see how I'm feeling if I want to keep talking about Magic cards. I probably won't do a spoiler discussion every day because there just won't be enough volume to talk about. Maybe every 2 days as we get into next week, maybe every 3 days. So stay tuned. I usually will talk about these spoilers on a 9 p.m. basis. So if I'm in the mood, I'll make an announcement sometime in the afternoon, and then hopefully grab all you guys' attention the same day. So I hope you all enjoyed. Hope you all learned something. Thanks for your time. Have a good night. Bye.